His boot snapped a twig. She spun, vanished between the canyon walls. He followed, fast, tight space, rough rock. No sound now, just his breath, a sudden drop. He slid, caught himself on his palms. Blood smeared the stone. A head movement, not her. Shadows, 4, maybe 5. Bare feet, painted skin, a sharp whistle. Then silence. A figure stepped from the cliff's edge above him, holding something high. It dripped. He looked down. The ground was wet. Then he saw what they'd done. He opened his mouth to shout. Too late. Something moved behind him. Hand slammed into his back, hard. He pitched forward to his knees. Dust burst up around his face. Fingers wrenched his arms behind him, grip like iron. He tried to rise. A knee crushed between his shoulders, breath blasted from his chest. The Apache girl stepped out from the rock wall ahead of him. She stood where the canyon narrowed. Her face was streaked with dust. Her eyes did not blink. She lifted one hand slowly so the others could see her, then dropped it. From the shadows, figures emerged, old men, lean men, silent men. They came out of cracks in the stone like they had always been part of the canyon itself. Their feet made no sound on the ground. They formed a half circle. No one spoke. No one rushed. They only watched. One of them raised an arm. In his hand was a strip of fresh scalp. Blood slid from it in slow drops. It struck the stone near the cowboy's knee and spread in a dark stain. The blood was not hers. It was a message. The girl stepped forward. She spoke fast, low. Her words were sharp but controlled. She pointed once at the cowboy, then to her chest, then to the old men. The tone shifted. Her voice carried urgency, then steadied. The elders did not change. One of them lifted his chin toward her. Another lifted his hand toward the cowboy. Wrists were seized. Rope scraped tight. Fibers bit into skin. His hands were forced together behind his back and bound hard. The knot was pulled until his shoulders drew back. He grunted once and went still. A cloth came down over his eyes. Dark swallowed the canyon. He was pulled to his feet, forced to walk. Steps echoed strangely now. The air cooled as they moved forward. Shade replaced heat. His boots no longer struck loose sand, but harder packed earth. Then stone. The slope angled downward. He stumbled once, nearly fell. The rope held him upright. The sounds of the outside world faded. Wind no longer whispered through open rock. The dry heat of the desert thinned. The air became close, heavy with old stone and dust that had not been touched in years. Every step took him farther from any trail he knew. They guided him around bends and through splits so narrow his shoulders brushed rock on both sides. The stone felt slick, worn smooth by time. His breath sounded loud inside the blindfold. He tried to measure the distance by his steps. Lost count. The ground shifted again. It dipped, then leveled, then dipped once more. The air cooled, further. Not cold, but different. Still. He felt the space change, opened slightly, wider beneath his feet. At last they stopped. Hands released his arms. The rope stayed tight. The blindfold was still in place. For a moment, nothing happened, only his breathing and the faint sound of nearby movement. Then the blindfold was lifted. Light flooded in. He blinked hard, squinted. Shapes formed slowly. Stone walls rose high around a hollow chamber, carved by nature and time. The floor was smooth, darkened by old smoke and ash. Stacked rocks formed a circle around a central patch of burned earth. This place did not feel like the desert above. It felt sealed. He had been led into ground no white man was meant to reach. The cloth peeled from his eyes. He blinked fast. Light slammed in. Stone walls towered around him in a closed ring. Shadows clung to the ridges where the sun never touched. Wind did not reach here. Sound did not carry. It was like being inside something ancient and watching itself. In the center lay a circle of stacked stones. Blackened earth filled its middle. Ash marked the edges. Char streaks crossed the ground like ribs beneath the dust. At the center of the burn sat a skull, small, charred, mouth wide, the jaw half broken away. One side cracked open, like it had split from heat or scream. The hollow sockets faced upward, not forward, as if it looked toward the sky when the fire took it. The cowboy stayed still. He felt the heat from the rocks beneath his knees. The Apache girl stepped into the space and spoke. Her voice was not soft now. She did not look at him. She spoke to the elders, slow, measured, each word spaced, each word weighted. She turned to him and translated. The child had been her brother. He had been shot by cavalry during a sweep through the outer ridges, caught without warning. The soldiers laughed, then burned the body to keep from carrying it. She pointed to the skull. This was what remained. One of the elders stepped forward. His face was deep-lined, his eyes flat. He held out his hand. Empty. Then motioned toward the skull. The girl translated again. The cowboy was to place his hand over the bones. A test. Nothing more was said. He looked down, looked at the rope binding his wrists. A man moved behind him, cut the rope once. The blade passed so close it nicked his sleeve. His wrists were free. He flexed his fingers. The skull waited. His breath caught in his throat. He reached slowly. Paused. His palm hovered over it, inches above. He could feel heat still rising. His hand trembled. Behind him, a knife hissed from its sheath. He heard it clear, sharp steel sliding loose. No mistake. He lowered his hand, fingers open. He placed it flat over the blackened dome of the skull. He did not close his eyes. The surface was warm. Not just sun-warm, deep warm. Bone warm. The kind of warmth that came from within stone that had soaked fire and memory. It throbbed faintly under his skin, not pulsing, but alive. No one spoke. A shadow passed overhead. A hawk cried out from the rim of the canyon. Its scream echoed down like a line drawn in the air. The elder stared at him, held the moment, then nodded once. The knife behind him did not strike. The cowboy's hand slipped from the skull. It left no mark. He did not move again. He had touched the weight of what was lost. He had not turned away. And for now, he was allowed to live. She ran with one hand pressed to her side. Blood slipped through her fingers. The desert blurred at the edges. Heat wavered in the distance. Her boots struck dry stone with dull rhythm. No sound behind her now. But she did not stop. The ridge ahead was low, a split in the rock. She reached it and dropped hard to her knees. Breathing tore from her throat. The wind caught her hair and tossed it across her face. She pulled herself forward, just enough to see over the edge. No one. She crawled down into the narrow space where cactus leaned low and dust clung to her lashes. Her vision pulsed. Light throbbed against her skull. She collapsed. Hours passed. She woke to hooves, not thunder, a slow rhythm, a single horse. She did not move. Through the grass a shape approached, broad shoulders, rifle across his back, dust along his coat from hard riding. He saw her. He reached for his weapon. She closed her eyes. The silence stretched. Then the leather creaked. Not in anger, not in readiness, in decision. She opened her eyes again. He had stepped down. He walked toward her with no words, kneeled, looked at her wound, said nothing. Tore the sleeve from his shirt and wrapped it tight. The cloth darkened fast. He held pressure. Waited, checked it again. Her eyes stayed locked on his. Still no sound. He reached for his canteen, tilted it. She drank. Water ran down her chin. When she tried to sit up, he placed one hand gently on her shoulder, not to stop her, only to steady. Then he stood, walked to his horse, pulled something from the saddlebag, a blanket, a tin of dried meat. He placed both beside her, then turned away. He mounted again, watched the desert, waited, not for her, for something unseen. She watched him, then she stood, weak, holding her ribs. She nodded once. He did not respond. She stepped away from the blanket, back into the brush, did not look back. He let her go. The sun burned higher. She vanished into the slope and out of sight. She never forgot the silence, the way he chose not to shoot, not to ask, not to turn her in for a bounty. He made no claim. He simply helped. Now he stood again beneath sacred stone, and the memory hung over her like a curtain. It was not spoken to the elders, but it was felt. The girl stood between the cowboy and the judgment of those who watched. They listened, but did not nod. She had chosen to repay mercy with trust. Now the choice belonged to them. The path narrowed between two sheer faces of red stone. They pushed him forward. No words, no signals, just the press of bodies and the unspoken weight of what lay ahead. They stopped at a bend where light bled through a break in the wall. The cowboy stepped into the hollow. The ground leveled there, a small flat space beneath the overhang. One grave, shallow, marked only by the earth itself. No wood, no carving, no stone. Just a shape in the dirt that had settled in a way no wind would ever shape. On top of it lay a cavalry jacket. The blue had faded to gray, the edges curled from sun and time, one shoulder torn, the brass buttons dulled. Beside it sat a pistol, rusted stiff, barrel bent, wood cracked on the grip, unused for years, and there, at the center rested a silver cross, simple, plain, but not unfamiliar. The cowboy froze, his boots locked to the ground. His hands slack at his sides, his breath caught and did not move. He took a step forward, his eyes locked on the cross. Not the jacket, not the gun, only that small glint of memory. He knelt. Dirt shifted beneath his knee. He reached for it, stopped. His fingers hovered, close enough to feel the warmth of the sun still trapped in the metal. He whispered the name, but only in his chest. He stood again, turned slowly to face the girl. She did not speak, but she did not look away. The others remained outside the hollow, watching, allowing this moment to pass without intervention. The cowboy looked down again. 2 years ago, his brother rode through this region, assigned to a scout patrol along the edge of the old boundary. No letters came back, only silence. The military said desertion. The town said disgrace. Their father never spoke the name again. The cowboy carried that silence across plains and rivers, carried it and into each saloon and into each job that came and went. It clung to his coat like smoke. Now he stood above the place where the silence ended. No words carved into stone, no flag, no marker, only dust, only the weight of what had not been spoken. He reached down, lifted the cross, turned it once in his palm. He did not take it. He placed it back, gently, straightened the jacket, aligned the pistol beside it, pressed the corners of the cloth flat, then stepped back from the grave. The girl lowered her head. The cowboy stared at the place where the trail had ended. It had not been the war or the desert or time that buried his brother. It had been something deeper. And now he would have to learn why. Night came slow. It did not drop like a curtain, it sank. Shadows lengthened across the canyon floor until the last of the gold slipped behind the rim. Then the fire was lit. No sparks rose, just heat, low flame, steady breath. The cowboy sat with his knees drawn up, palms against his thighs. His wrists ached where the rope had bitten earlier. His shoulders stiffened from the cold that had crept in as the light died. The elders sat around the fire. No circle, no ritual, just presence, stillness that had weight. The girl spoke first, soft, careful. She did not lift her head. She looked at the ground between her knees as she translated. The story did not unfold. It pressed. Her voice shaped the words the old men gave her. She did not add, did not change. The child who died was small, too young to run fast, too young to fight. He had stood still when the soldiers came, thinking they would pass. He was wrong. The cowboy's brother had fired first. No warning, no call. Just the reflex of fear. The boy fell. The smoke drifted. The moment never left. But the Apache did not strike back. They found the soldier, fed him, gave him water, let him speak. They gave him the chance to stay, to put down the weapon, to share the truth. He nodded, said yes, then tried to flee that same night, took a knife, tried to kill one of the elders in his escape. He was caught, not beaten, not gutted. He was buried, alive, not for vengeance, for cleansing. The girl said this slow, each word shaped like a cut into stone. They had buried his brother not to end him, but to seal him, to keep what he had brought from spreading. The cowboy did not move. The fire hissed in the center. Wind brushed across the canyon top. A small stone tumbled down from the high ledge, rolled once, then stopped. He looked at the silver cross beside him. It rested near the corner of the old coat, its chain broken, its shine dulled by grit and years. He reached, stopped. His fingers hovered just above it. He felt the warmth of the metal against the night air, the same warmth that had clung to the skull earlier, memory soaked into shape. He drew his hand back. Let it be. The girl looked at him then. Her eyes did not soften. Her mouth did not part. They had given him the truth, and they had watched him hold it. Now they waited for the next step. The fire crackled low, and the canyon held its breath. The elder moved first. He stood with the stiffness of old bone and long memory. He walked slowly to the fire. From within a folded cloth he pulled a red-stained stone, flat, heavy, its center soaked dark, edges worn smooth. The girl took it from his hand. She stepped to the cowboy, held the stone out. He took it. It sat warm in his palm. He did not ask what the stain was. Next came the bone pendant, hollow, thin, carved in spirals too delicate for haste. It dangled from a blackened leather cord. She placed it in his other hand. Then she reached inside her sleeve, brought out a shard of flint. Not clean, jagged, the broken tip of an arrowhead, edges still sharp, dried blood along one curve. Her brother's, the one who died with the child, the last thing she had kept. She did not explain it. She simply added it to the rest. 3 items, no more, no less. He looked down. Each one held weight different than the others. One soaked with death, one shaped by story, one broken by use. She pointed east, not far. She traced a line in the dirt, a place below the ridges, near water, where the child had fallen. She said it must be done by the next sun. The fire cracked. The air around the canyon walls did not move. He looked to the elders. They did not threaten. They did not demand. They only watched. The choice was placed in his hands as if it had always been meant for them. The rope was untied. His wrists ached from the release. He stood. The cowboy looked to the girl. Her eyes held no hope, no sorrow, only waiting. This was the moment that split paths. One led back to dust and silence. The other did not end. If he honored the task, he would walk free. If he betrayed it, he would never be found again. No grave, no return. The items felt heavier now, not from weight, but from meaning. One of the younger men approached and handed him a satchel. Old leather, worn straps, no metal, no markings. The cowboy placed the stone, the pendant, the shard inside, buckled it shut. They gave him no food, no water, just the task. He walked back toward the split in the canyon. No one followed. His boots kicked small stones that rolled ahead of him. The air thinned as he climbed. Warmth returned. He reached the rim just as the moon rose over the far ridge. Below him, the desert waited, and the place he had to find still slept under ash and wind. The trail stretched thin across the hills. Dust clung to the folds of his coat. His horse moved slow beneath him. Each step sounded louder in the quiet. No bird called, no wind carried. He rode without map or word. The leather satchel tapped against his seat. Inside it, the red stone shifted. The bone pendant knocked once against the flint shard. He felt them every time the saddle dipped, as if the desert wanted to remind him they were still there. He passed the old bluff where cattle used to roam. Bones scattered near the edge, white, picked clean. A rusted canteen swung from a broken branch, shot through, left behind. He did not stop. The sun passed high, then dropped low. Shadows bent longer. He found the place just before the light failed. It was not marked. It was not meant to be. Just a patch of burned ground near the edge of a dry creek bed. The soil still held black in its grain. Years had passed, but the mark had not lifted. Scrub brush grew around it. Nothing grew in it. He dismounted. The horse stood still. The cowboy stepped forward, boots soft on brittle ground. He crouched and pressed his palm flat against the soil, still warm, not from sun, from memory. He set the satchel down, opened it slow. First he drew the red stone. He turned it in his palm. The stain caught the edge of light and held it. Then he set it on the ground. Next came the pendant. The cord tangled slightly. He untied the knot with care, laid the carved bone beside the stone. Last came the arrowhead, sharp, uncleaned, dull at one end, bright at the break. He looked at the three, then dug. No tool, just hands. Fingers pulled at dry layers of packed dust and old ash. Nails broke, skin split. Blood mixed into the soil. He did not stop. He dug until the hollow felt deep enough. He placed each item inside, not tossed, not piled, set with care. The pendant, last. Then he covered them. The dirt fell soft. He pressed it flat, wiped his palms on his thighs, sat back on his heels. He reached into his coat, pulled out the silver cross. It glinted once in the low sun. He did not put it in the grave. He placed it on a flat stone near Bille, set it where it could be seen. Then he opened a small pouch. Inside was sage. He lit it, let the smoke curl up, not high, not fast, just steady. The smell filled the air. He did not speak. He did not pray. He sat cross-legged beside the place and watched the smoke drift, watched the light fade, watched the wind shift. He stayed long enough that the stars began to show. He did not move. Not yet. The desert was not done with him, and he would not leave until it was. He rode slow through the last stretch of brush. The horse moved steady beneath him. The wind picked up slightly, dry, sharp with stone and silence. No sound but hooves on loose gravel. No sign of movement ahead. The canyon rim appeared between two sharp ridges. Light slanted across it now, late, low, edging toward dusk but not yet gone. He dismounted at the rise, looked around. No one stood watch, no voice called. But there it was, a single branch, stuck upright in the soil. At its tip, a feather tied with rawhide, lifted gently with the breeze, then stilled. He stepped forward, boots soft on dust. The same dust he had crossed the day before. It felt different now, not because the trail changed, but because he had. Beside a flat rock at the edge of the rim, she stood, the girl, alone. No elders behind her, no guards in the stone, only her. She did not move until he reached her. Then she nodded once, not deep, not slow, just enough. Her eyes met his. There was no question in them, no demand. She reached forward, placed her hand flat against the center of his chest, held it there. Not long, just enough to feel that he still carried what he had seen. Then her hand dropped. She held out her other palm. Open. He reached into his pocket, pulled the silver cross. The chain coiled around his fingers. He placed it in her hand. She looked at it, turned it once between her fingers, then stepped past him, walked to the edge. She held the cross above the canyon, then released it. It dropped. No sound, no echo, only distance. She stood for one more breath, then turned away. She walked across the stone, back the way he had come. Not quickly, not slow, with the rhythm of someone who carried nothing more. She did not look back. He watched until the folds of rock swallowed her. Then he looked out across the canyon. Still no wind, still no voices, Only that feather, still turning slowly at the rim. He did not follow. He did not sit. He stood there long enough to know that what had been carried was not just his anymore. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside the sheriff's office, dust hung in the sunbeams, like grain in still water. Files lay open across the desk. A badge rested beside a half-empty cup. The sheriff sat, leaned back in his chair, boots crossed on the edge of the drawer. The cowboy stepped in. He said nothing, just reached into his coat, pulled out a folded sheet, thick paper, stained at one corner. A single red X marked one spot in the lower canyon region. No name, no trail, no signature. He placed it on the desk. The sheriff squinted, took his boots off the drawer, picked up the paper, smoothed it flat. He looked at the mark. He laughed, said there was nothing out there but dried stone and old myths. Said no man had gone that deep since before the war. Said the map was a lie or a joke or a ghost story someone wanted to pass along. The cowboy didn't blink. He turned, walked back toward the door. The sheriff called after him, still smiling. Said if he ever found what was out there, he ought to bottle it and sell the story to the traveling shows. The cowboy stepped into the light, did not answer, did not turn. The saddlebag on his left hip thudded with new weight, not loud, just noticeable. Its shape had changed, not from anything he carried back, from what he left behind. The town had not shifted. Same dust in the street, same boards on the store, same wind lifting the corner of the blacksmith's sign. But he felt it, something gone in him, something else set in its place. He moved down the boardwalk past the saloon. Men drank from tin mugs and slapped cards against the table. One looked up, met his eyes, then looked away. The cowboy passed the general store. The girl who ran the ledger stood behind the counter. She opened her mouth to speak, closed it. Let him pass. He reached the edge of town. The horse waited where he had tied it. He mounted. Leather creaked beneath him. He looked back once. The wind picked up. The map remained inside the sheriff's desk, but the mark had been made elsewhere now, not on paper, not on trail, inside him. He clicked the reins. The horse turned, and they rode out, toward nothing the town would ever understand. The boy knelt at the edge of the riverbed. Dry earth cracked beneath his boots. A lizard darted across the flat stone and vanished beneath a shadow. He shifted loose pebbles with his hand. Sand slid through his fingers. Something caught his eye, half buried in the dirt. Bone white, a curve, a shape not made by wind or time. He dug it free. A pendant, carved in slow spirals, worn smooth along the edges. The leather cord still clung to the top, frayed but whole. Dust clung to the grooves. He held it to the light. It felt warm, not from sun, from story. He slipped it into his pocket and rose. The canyon wind pressed against his back as he turned toward home. The old cabin stood crooked against the ridge. Smoke curled from the chimney, faint, thin as thread. The door creaked when he pushed it. Inside, the air was still, warm with firelight. Shadows moved along the wall. The cowboy sat near the hearth, back straight, shoulders broad but slowed now with time. His hair gone silver, lines deeper around. His eyes. He stared at the flame, did not look up. The boy stepped forward, reached into his pocket, held out the pendant. The cowboy turned his head, his eyes locked on it. He reached out, took it with care, turned it once between his fingers. The motion slow, reverent, familiar. He reached beneath the chair, pulled out a strip of old cloth, faded, folded. He wrapped the pendant tight, placed it beside a cracked red stone on the mantel. The two objects sat silent in the flicker. The cowboy stared at them, then spoke. His voice was low, gravel and breath. Some things ain't meant to be spoken, but they must be carried. The boy said nothing. He sat on the floor beside the chair, watched the fire, watched the stone, watched the cloth bundle that held more weight than its shape allowed. The wind pressed faintly against the cabin walls. The wood shifted. The flames moved in slow rhythm. No story was told. No question was asked. But the weight of it settled between them and stayed. The boots were new, but worn now with miles. Dust clung to the legs of his trousers. Sun pressed at his back. The canyon lay ahead, the same as it had when he was a boy. Same stone, same silence, same cut in the earth where stories settled instead of words. He walked without hurry. The wind moved steady, not strong, just present. He climbed the narrow path between the cliffs. The sun caught the edge of the ridge. Long light slid down the stone. No shadows moved where none waited. At the top, he stopped. The edge opened before him. The place where the wind once lifted a feather tied to a branch. That branch still stood. Thin, bent slightly with time, but still rooted in the place it had been driven. He reached into the small leather pouch on his belt, pulled the cloth, unwrapped it slow. The bone pendant rested inside, still smooth, still carved, still whole. He held it in his palm. The weight had not changed, but what it meant had. He tied the leather cord to the branch, tight, no flourish, just purpose. He let the cloth fall against the wood. It caught a breeze, lifted once, then dropped, hung quiet. Below, the canyon floor still held the black scar where old fires had burned. Smoke drifted there, thin, almost gone, but not cold, not dead, just slow. He stood long enough to feel the stone under his boots, to let the wind pass across his chest, to let the silence move through him without breaking. Then it came. A sound. Faint. Low. A whistle. From deep inside the stone, not sharp, not warning. Like breath drawn through a hollow bone, like memory carried by air. He did not speak. He did not search for its source. He only listened. Let it pass through him. Then he turned. Walked away from the edge, his steps light. The trail behind him marked for now, but not forever. Some stories stayed quiet, but they never stopped breathing. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and comment on the Old Western Tales.